reason the European countries have managed to get under the radar on this issue.
Does it also have something to do with our media sponsored by food companies?
Yeah, it does. And the fact that we have not labeled it, so nobody knows whether you're eating it or not. I mean, that's been a huge fight. You know, Dennis Kucinich has tried to get labeling very simple. You know, he's not saying ban this stuff. He's saying just tell us if we're eating it, which seems like a very reasonable position.
And Monsanto fought this. They
viciously
said that if you say it does not have GMO, genetically modified organisms in it.
Yeah, you can't even say that.
That suggests there's something wrong with it. So when Ben and Jerry's tried to do that, they weren't allowed.
That's right. There's a lot of litigation over that still in Vermont and other states, in California as well. Now, why is the industry so intent on not having this product labeled? Well, they think, rightly, that people wouldn't buy it. And the reason they wouldn't buy it is it offers the consumer nothing. No benefit. Now, if you could, Americans will eat all sorts of strange things. If there was a benefit, if you could say, well, this genetically modified soy oil will make you skinny, we would buy it. We would eat it. But so far, the traits that they've managed to get into these crops benefit farmers, arguably, and not consumers. The other reason I understand that they resist labeling is that if there were labels, there would be ways to trace outbreaks of allergy, any kind of health problems associated with GMOs you could tie to a particular food. Right now, if there are any allergies that are tied to a GMO food, you can't prove it. And so one of the reasons the industry has fought it is that they're vulnerable to that. When the GMO industry was starting, transgenic crops, they made a decision not to seek any limits on liability from the Congress, as the nuclear industry did. And they decided that would not look good to ask for that. So they just took a chance. And this is, in the view of many activists, their great vulnerability is product liability. And so labeling is a way to help prevent that eventuality. So they fought it, you know, I mean, ferociously and successfully.
Michael Pollan, what were you most surprised by in writing this book in defense of food?
I was most surprised by two things. One was that the science on nutrition that we all traffic in every day, we read these articles on the front page, we talk about antioxidants and cholesterol and all this kind of stuff, it's really sketchy. That nutritional science is still a very young science, and food is very complicated, as is the human digestive system. There's a great mystery on both ends of the food chain, and science has not yet sorted it out. Nutrition science is where surgery was in about 1650. You know, really interesting and promising, but would you want to have them operate on you yet? I don't think so. I don't think we want to change our eating decisions based on nutritional science. But what I also was surprised at is how many opportunities we now have. If we're willing to put the money and the time into it to get off the Western diet and find another way of eating without actually having to leave civilization or, you know, grow all your own food or anything, although I do think we should grow whatever food we can, that it is such a hopeful time, and that there's some very simple things we can all do to eat well without being cowed by the scientists.
The healthiest cuisines, what do you feel they are? Well,
the interesting thing is that most traditional cuisines are very healthy. That the human body has done very well on the Mediterranean diet, on the Japanese diet, on the peasant South American diet. It's really interesting how many different foods we can do well on. The one diet we seem poorly adapted to happens to be the one we're eating, the Western diet. So whatever traditional diet suits you, you like eating that way, you know, follow it. And that's a good rule of thumb. There's an enormous amount of wisdom contained in a cuisine. And, you know, we privilege scientific information and authority in this country, but of course there's cultural authority and information too. And whoever figured out that olive oil and tomatoes was a really great combination was actually, we're now learning onto something scientifically. If you want to use that nutrient vocabulary, the lycopene in the tomato, which we think is the good thing, is basically made available to your body through the olive oil. So there was a wisdom in those combinations, and and you see it throughout.
The whole push for hydrogenated oils. I grew up on margarine. You should never eat butter. Only margarine.
Yeah, I know. I did too, and that was a huge mistake. That was a mistake.
Can we go back in time?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, the butter, fortunately, is still here. We can't reheat, but we can switch to one of the important...
Where did it come from?
Well, margarine was cheaper. Again, take a cheap raw material, which was to say they had developed these technologies for getting oil out of cottonseed and soy and all this kind of stuff. And there then was this health concern about saturated fat, the great evil. I mean, another hallmark of nutritionism is that there's always the evil nutrient and the blessed nutrient, but it's always changing. So the evil nutrient for a long time has been saturated fat, and the good nutrient was polyunsaturated fat. So people thought, well, let's take the polyunsaturated fats and we'll figure out a way to make them hard at room temperature, which involved the hydrogenation process. You basically fire hydrogen at it. And then you had something that looked like butter. It was very controversial, though. People actually, in the late 1900s, several states passed laws saying you had to dye your butter pink, so people wouldn't be confused and would know that that's an imitation food. And then the Supreme Court, the industry got the Supreme Court to throw this out. So butter was elevated as the more modern, more healthy food. And it turned out that we replaced this possibly mildly unhealthy fat called saturated fat with now a demonstrably lethal one called hydrogenated oil.
How is it demonstrably lethal?
Well, they have since proven to pretty high standard that trans fats are implicated both in heart disease and cancer.
Michael Pollan is a UC Berkeley professor. His latest book is called In Defense of Food, An Eater's Manifesto. Oh, and by the way, this interesting note, the New York City Board of Health voted to require restaurant chains operating in New York to prominently display calorie information on their menus and menu boards beginning on March 31st. It applies to any New York City chain restaurant that has 15 or more outlets nationwide and includes posting calorie information about cocktails. And that does it for Democracy Now! Democracy Now! Produced by Mike Berkshire, Abdul Kudus, Aaron Mate, Angelique Kamet, Jeffrey Hagerman, Steve Martinez, Nicole Salazar, Robbie Karen, Mike DeFilippo, Miguel Noguera, and Peter Curries, our engineers. Peter, I hope you feel better. Thanks to Becca Staley. Our website, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for joining us.